Okay, let's get on the record. This is 25 SC 006076, State versus Jerome Clark. Good afternoon, Mr. Clark. Come on, a little closer. Great. Good afternoon. You're here with your lawyer, Mr. Hoover, for us to talk about bond. You were here, I think it was a couple weeks ago, recently, where I heard from Mr. Hoover a bit about some motions that he'd filed. Actually ruled on the motions for a co-defendant, but in a footnote addressed the concerns Mr. Hoover raised about severance and if you are going to go to trial, with whom should you be tried based on how the counts break out in the indictment. Today we're just going to talk about bond. Mr. Hoover is going to tell me why you ought to have a bond if you don't have one, and if you have one but it's too high, why it should be lowered. So I'll hear from him. I may have a few questions for you, and then I'll also hear from the prosecutor about his perspective as to whether you should get bond, and if there are family members of the victim in the part of the case where you've been charged and they want to be heard, I need to hear from them as well. Okay? So that's our focus. Not severance, not suppression, just bond. You got it? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Mr. Hoover.
Yes, Your Honor. This will be kind of brief because we've already had a bunch of discussions that the court's aware of about this case. Specifically in regards to bond, Mr. Clark is, I believe, 17 years old right now. He was actually in high school when he was arrested. After speaking with Mr. Clark and his family, it was my understanding that he was on the honor roll, making good grades. He was working at Five Guys. He actually was going to school, had a job. It's also my understanding that he has no felony convictions, never been in trouble before. Up until this incident with all of these young men that live in his neighborhood, he's pretty much lived a straight and narrow life. In regards to the timing, as you're aware, this case is from, I believe, 2024. Mr. Clark was arrested May 2nd, 2025, and he's been incarcerated ever since. It's my understanding is I think I have the most recent indictment is from 9/26/2025. I'm not sure of the earlier one, the exact date of that one. I believe, well, obviously based off of this new indictment, he would be entitled to a bond simply because of the amount of time that's passed between his arrest and this indictment. Again, I got in the case late, so I'm not exactly sure when the first indictment happened. With that said, this case is definitely, like we said, is going to get severed. That means Mr. Clark won't be going first, or he most likely won't be going first in that first group, which means it'll take longer for him to actually get into trial, which keeps him out of school longer, which keeps him out of work longer and away from his family. And also, I do have that trial starting the first Monday of August that's going to run in Carroll.
You had, not this case, but
mine in Carroll
right.
County, that's going to last a month at the earliest, which means we're looking at close to the end of the year before Mr. Clark can go to trial. For those reasons, Your Honor, we're asking that Mr. Clark be given a bond that he and his family can make, a reasonable bond, so he can get back into school while we're trying to figure everything else out.
Okay. I got a couple questions, but first, just some timeline. Mr. Clark was arrested on May 2nd or May 1st. He had his first appearance on May 2nd.
Correct.
And then he was indicted on June 9th. So 37 days later, in the first indictment. That was superseded by the one we're talking about now, but he was indicted within that 90-day window. Mr. Clark, where were you in school?
I was going to my other period.
Pardon me?
I was going to my other period.
No, what school? What school were you in?
Oh, Stratford.
Stratford?
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have to lean into the microphone. I can hear you. Where's Stratford?
All right. My apologies.
Where's Stratford?
It's in Tennessee.
Oh, you were in Tennessee.
Yes.
So connect me, Mr. Hoover, and hey, he was hanging out with kids on his street, because it's not a Tennessee case.
Correct. So the neighborhood that he was in, the neighborhood where this incident happened, that's a neighborhood that he lived in. I believe was it your father that moved to Tennessee?
Yes.
His father moved to Tennessee, and that's where he started working and going to school.
Okay.
So when in the police reports, some officers state that he fled and disappeared when he did. He just went back home. He didn't leave the state because he was fleeing. He went back home to where he was actually re-enrolled in school.
So you had family, Mr. Clark, here in Atlanta, and you were at times staying there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you in school ever in Atlanta, or you were just here in the summer?
I was in both.
What school did you go to in Atlanta?
I was going to Douglas High School.
All right. Stratford is somewhere in Tennessee.
Yes.
Okay, I know where Douglas is. And that is a familiar name because that's where a number of the co-defendants went to high school. All right. So what year were you in when you got arrested? Junior year, senior year?
Senior year.
Senior year? So 4 years of high school. Of the four, how many were Douglas versus how many were at Stratford?
All the way to the 11th grade.
And Douglas High School?
Yes.
So 3 years in Douglas,
Yes.
and then you moved to Tennessee and were in high school there.
Yes, sir.
All right. And this job at Five Guys, that was a job in Tennessee, or that was a job here when you were in Atlanta?
Job here.
Okay. Did you have a job when you were going to Stratford High School?
I was getting transferred. I transferred my work to Tennessee.
Like with Five Guys?
Yes.
Okay. I know they did that. Do you have any kids?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you for that information. Mr. Abadi.
Judge, we respectfully request you deny defense counsel's motion for bond for several reasons. I guess whether he lived in Atlanta or lived in Tennessee at the time of this incident in December of 2024, he was in Atlanta, and after he's alleged to have been a part of the murder of the victim in this case, fled back to Tennessee, where he was arrested by the Fugitive Task Force. He was actually arrested on March 27th of 2025, and then he refused extradition, which is why he doesn't arrive to Fulton County until I think May 1st or May 2nd of 2025. I would submit to the court that he's also a danger to the community based on the facts and circumstances of this case. I won't go into too much detail, as your honors heard. A lot of the facts and circumstances related or surrounding this incident, but this was a planned armed robbery disguised as a marijuana transaction that led to the death of the victim in this case, where he was lured there under the pretenses that he was going to be selling some marijuana. Instead, he was met by several of the defendants, including this one. Mr. Clark is alleged to have walked up to the vehicle that Mr. Van Arsdale was driving, and based on the statements of some of his co-defendants, he pulled a gun out and was the first to shoot twice, which led to the other co-defendant shooting at the victim as he was in his vehicle. I submit to the court, he does, obviously, because he's so young, he doesn't have a felony history. I was able to get his juvenile history, and in my review of that, the only things that they had notated was that there were truancy charges from 2017 and 19 as it relates to his attendance at school. Based on all of those facts and circumstances, and from the totality of the circumstances, I would submit to the court that this defendant at this time is not a good candidate for bond, and respectfully would request you deny defense counsel's motion.
Okay. Is there anyone from Mr. Van Arsdale's family here who wants to speak?
Good afternoon. I'm Elisa Van Arsdale, the mother of Darren Lamont Van Arsdale the second, better known as Monty, and I'm posing bond from Mr. Maloney. I did not hear everything.
This is Mr. Clark.
Mr. Clark.
Mr. Maloney's next.
Both. I got you. Mr. Clark. And I'm not sure what all, that was said, but from what we're understanding, he is a flight risk. He was already in Tennessee and had to be extradited back here, left after the murder of my son. from what I'm understanding, even with investigation from the detective, he unenrolled the day after murdering my son and then left to go to Tennessee. So in his involvement with gang activity and gang members to me is definitely an influence where he can be influenced and also influential in the community. So I'm opposing, his bond for those reasons.
Okay. I appreciate you being here and sharing that. Thank you.
Nothing further from the state.
Okay.
May I address a couple things before?
You may. I always circle back to the movement. Share what you want to share.
So just two quick things, Your Honor. In regards to the state saying because Mr. Clark is so young, that means that's the reason he doesn't have a felony history. You and I both know that's not true. I've had clients standing in front of you that are a lot younger than Mr. Clark with a felony history. The reason he doesn't have a felony history because he was literally an honor roll student in high school, working a job, living between his mother and his father who were separated, doing everything he was supposed to do. So it's not because of his age, it's because of everything else he was doing. And secondly, Your Honor, just to go a little more into how the state said that Mr. Clark was the one that shot first, the way this all quote unquote blew up was because Mr. Bird, who's a co-defendant in the case, gets arrested for literally almost every charge that's on the indictment. And Mr. Bird is the one who every time they interviewed him about something, he distanced himself and then said everyone else is the one that did it. So there is no, aha, we got you. Mr. Clark is definitely the shooter. It's Mr. Bird trying to get out of literally every other count and blaming everyone but him. So it's not as cut and dry as the state is saying. And again, Mr. Clark has been doing everything right up until this point.
Can you give a little more context to why it was Mr. Clark went to Tennessee? I appreciate that he didn't go into hiding because he was openly and notoriously, I assume, going to this high school. I'm assuming Stratford is not an online high school, but it's a high school. And so he's walking down the hall with a backpack and doing his thing. Not in Atlanta. So he's definitely gotten out of town. But what you've mentioned, I don't need to get into the family matters that the parents separated, but the coincidence, at least, if not the cause to the move, is something I need to get comfortable with.
Yes, sir. So he was actually in school when he was arrested. Like he went back to school. Like that's why he went back home.
Right. I could tell because he kept saying, what period was I in? I didn't want to know where were you when you got arrested? And I didn't ask my question well. For some reason, Mr. Clark left Atlanta.
Yes.
After 3 years at Douglas High School where he was doing well and he had a job. And it just so happens that it was pretty soon after this situation in which maybe he was involved, maybe he wasn't. There are allegations. I'm trying to understand why he moved.
So he moved before this incident happened. He was already living there, coming back here to visit mom and the family in the neighborhood where he had more time in this neighborhood than he did in Tennessee. So he had already moved. And then when he went back, it was because he literally went back home and went back to school. It's not like he moved because of this.
Okay.
He didn't leave because of it. He was already gone here visiting and then went back home.
Okay. The shooting happened on the 29th of December, which would be during a winter break.
Exactly.
So Mr. Clark's not in school at that. He's enrolled, but he's not actually in classes because it's winter break.
Correct.
And what you're saying is that he was visiting friends and family. He had family still in the Atlanta area during that break, which would explain his presence, but also would explain his departure afterwards because he was, he was going home. That was home at the time.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Got it. Mr. Clark, who is in if you were to get a bond and you could make that bond, you going home to Tennessee, you going home to Atlanta? Where are you going?
To Atlanta.
To Atlanta.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that your mother's household?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Is that who just raised her hand? Grandma. Okay. So grandma's here. And grandma lives where in the metro area? Okay. So that's where you'd be staying?
Yes, sir.
Yes? Okay. Who stays with your father in Tennessee?
Say again, Your Honor.
Your father is the one who moved to Tennessee?
Who's already living out there?
Pardon me?
Who's already living out there, Your Honor.
Okay, he was in Tennessee, and that's who you were living with when you were going to Stratford High School.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, who lives in that household? If you and I were tonight, hey, we're gonna go visit your dad in what city in Tennessee is it?
Nashville.
Nashville. We're gonna go see your dad in Nashville. Knock on the door. Who lives in that house?
My father and my little sister.
Your sister?
Yes.
How old is she?
Couple months.
She's a couple months old?
Yes, sir.
Like, is a baby?
Yes.
Okay. Where is her mom?
In Nashville.
Okay. And who lives with your grandmother?
It's been a little minute, so I don't.
He's been in jail since he's been arrested, Your Honor. I'm not sure if he,
Okay, well, I just wasn't sure. When you went to Douglas High School, did you live with your grandmother?
I live with my mother.
Okay. Where's she?
She moved, so I don't know.
You don't know where she went?
No, sir.
Okay. And the grandmother who's here in court, is that the mother of your father or the mother of your mother?
Mother of my father.
Got it. Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Your trial, Mr. Hoover, you said is basically the month of August.
at the very, yes, at the very.
Right. Okay, but it starts at the beginning of August?
The first Monday in August, we're picking a jury, yes.
Okay, got it. Is it a capital case or it's just a complicated case?
It was going to be a capital case. They decided not to seek death to try the case, so it's just a complicated case now.
Okay, one defendant?
One defendant, yes.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Clark, you present a complicated situation. It sounds like you were doing well in school, and it sounds like you have, for the most part, stayed out of trouble. I appreciate that you were a truant at one point, but it also sounds like you were doing well in school. You've had to shuttle between households because your parents separated. That's always complicated. So it's hard to figure out exactly where your roots are. But then I also have this set of real serious charges that you're facing. And I appreciate that they are right now just allegations. They're charges, not anything you've pled to or the state has proven. And I also appreciate the back and forth between the lawyers, that the state thinks the evidence is X, and Mr. Hoover very appropriately said, well, my understanding is that most of the state's case comes out of the mouth of the guy who's trying to help himself and hurt everyone else. I suspect it's more than that, but I bet that's a big piece of it. I'm going to keep you where you are right now. We have a final plea in this case in less than a month. And I expect more clarity to come in terms of which defendants are still in the case and which aren't. And Mr. Hoover, we should talk about bond again after we get through that final plea date, because that may have cleared up not only when we could try the case, but who remains in the case. And so at this point, Mr. Clark, you're going to stay in custody, but I'm not saying bond would never work out. We'll talk about it after we get through the final plea. I think I'm going to learn a little bit more about the case and some of the facts and circumstances around it as we work through that final plea date. And I'll be more comfortable then thinking about, if you were going to get a bond, what would that look like? What would be the right conditions that would guarantee everyone's safety and would also guarantee that you come back to court and we don't have to deal with he's in another state and he's resisting coming back here. That's not a situation I need us to go through. Okay. So I will see you in less than a month for the final plea, and it may be that we talk about bond again then. All right.
I'm going to talk to you.